What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. FSU week, so we are going behind enemy lines. We're talking to Clay Fink, Noles247, guy that we really trust on this Noles stuff, following him for years. He gave a detailed breakdown of the team, kind of where they're going from here, what their expectations were, where they're at, where their weaknesses are, where their strengths might be, path to winning, which try to push him on. He didn't really give me that much. They're very somber in Nole land, but Fink's a total pro and did the best he could to talk about where the Noles were at this point in the season and some of the challenges they may present to the University of Miami. For some folks that they don't go up and down, they're steady, they're always strong, and that is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
What's going on, D? Yeah, normally these behind enemy lines previews are like 15, 20 minutes, but Clay gave us about 40 minutes of his time. And look, one of the things I like about him is a lot of these FSU reporters, you can find them taking cheap shots all over the place at Miami over the years. I'm sure he's had some jabs on Twitter, but he's not as obnoxious as some of the others. So I appreciate his time, and I thought it was a really good preview by him.
Yeah, me on the other hand, I am a cheap shot artist. I don't think I miss any opportunity, although this one, we kept it professional because really we wanted to learn about where the Noles were at. It wasn't the time, place to troll and all that kind of stuff. And Fink was a pro, man. He really did a great job and it helped explain realistically how they got to this point, where they're at. And I gave him, like I said, every opportunity to say, what's the path for FSU to win this game? And he didn't seem to have that many answers. And I know, if anyone knows, it'd be him. I'm still nervous. My big concern, I talked about it before, is cheap shots, hits below the belt. Letting their pass rush and their corners really get into the game by being too cute with the passing game. I think if you run right at Patrick Payton, right at Marvin Jones, and Fink talked about how weak those guys are against the run right at those guys, punish them, make them quit. I very much question the competitive character of this FSU team. I think that's really one of the reasons why they're 1-6 is their best players, their defensive line, really bad character, at least football wise. I don't know how they are off the field, but just watching the film, aside from Farmer, these are not guys you want to go to war with in a football setting. So I think you want to expose that, punish them, make them quit.
Yeah, agreed. And look, they have talents there. I don't think it's necessarily what many thought before the season, where it was the best defensive line in terms of talent. And I don't think they have the depth either. That's for sure, as we've seen this year. But you said it, man. The size on the edge and the just the ability to hold the point of attack on the edge there doesn't seem like it's on that roster right now. Obviously, we know about guys like Marvin Jones, Pat Payton, highly touted, highly thought of before this season. And I think those guys still have an opportunity to get drafted down the line, but the production has not been there this year. And look, we saw the way that Miami finished the game against Louisville last week. We understand the way the passing attack has been prolific this year, but I would expect Miami to really be able to pound the rock against these guys.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into all that with Clay Fink again. Long discussion, a lot of detail. First, want to talk about a really cool event on Sunday. Hurricane Team Store, Sunday, 2 to 3. You got Nigel Pack, Matthew Cleveland, Lynn Kidd, the stars of this Miami Hurricanes basketball team. Pete and I were out there for an open run that they had. The team looks very well-rounded, very interesting. A lot of three-point shooting, a lot of athleticism, a lot of interior scoring with Kidd, who will be there for the autograph signing at the Miami Hurricane Team Store that is right next to campus, right next to the Thesis Hotel on the other side of US 1. Unbelievable spot. Use promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first item there, so you can shop, get a deal using that promo code INSIGHT20. They got a ton of stuff. The Cam Ward. They even got Cam Ward basketball jerseys. So
I have a feeling we'll see those out there.
Yeah, there'll be a bunch of stuff, and they got just the normal Canes basketball gear, the new shoes, the new Adidas, the Boost, Alpha Boost version 2. They got a ton of stuff. Go to the Miami Hurricane Team Store. Go to this event Sunday, 2 to 3 p.m. You got Nigel Pack, Matthew Cleveland, Lynn Kidd, top 3 players on the team. Check them out there at the Miami Hurricane Team Store. And if you want to shop online, not going to be able to make it out, MiamiHTS.com. You can still use promo code INSIGHT20 for 20% off.
D, I'll say this: I had a chance before you made it to practice today to interact with these guys in the media session that they had. They had the media day out there, and we talk about character when it comes to the guys that Mario Cristobal is recruiting on the football side. But really great group of guys, and excited to see them out there this year. But that event should be great, and I'm sure they'll be great with the kids and everything. So. Make it out there to the Miami Hurricane team store on Sunday.
Yeah, and listen, like and subscribe to this podcast. I don't say it enough. My wife was on me this morning. She's like, you need more subscribers. You guys got so many listeners. You need more subscribers. So if you're listening, you're not subscribed, please do me a favor, subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate that support. It makes it a lot easier to come to you guys daily, plus the reaction pods and expanded basketball coverage, which we're going to be doing this year. You saw the interviews that Pete posted with the various players. A lot more basketball coverage, a lot more baseball coverage, and football continues to grow and grow. Recruiting continues to grow and grow. Should have a very big bank update for you very, very soon. You're going to want to see that. So like and subscribe for the most exclusive info for free here at CanesInSight. Or if you get the free info at CanesInsight.com, 7 million posts and counting. So with all that said, we're kicking it to Clay Fink.
Canes fans, Peter Ariz here. Wanted to tell you about our friends at Asset Dash, the best portfolio tracker and rewards program in crypto. You see the website right here, assetdash.com. You can scan the QR code to download Asset Dash. And Asset Dash is the best place to track all your investments, earn rewards, and now buy over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies on Solana natively through the app. You earn additional coins when buying through the app. Download Asset Dash for all of your portfolio tracking needs, crypto, NFTs, stocks. If you invest in something, Asset Dash supports it. Enter the code CANES, all caps, at sign up to receive an upgraded premium Asset Dash Gold membership free for life. This is a limited time offer only. Again, CANES, all caps, at sign up. If you invest in something, Asset Dash supports it. All right, joining us now on the CanesInsight Daily Podcast, as we do every week, getting an opposing reporter joining us here. Clay Fink from Noles247 does a great job over there. Clay, excited to have you on the show today. And it's Miami, Florida State week. Look, it may not have the same pizzazz as it normally does, but obviously huge game for Miami here, undefeated. And Florida State, I'm sure, look, the way the season's been going, if they can pull this one out, it makes things a lot, easier to kind of digest the way things have gone. But again, Clay, bringing up your Twitter page here, Canes fans, go follow him. He has great info on the Noles and does a great job covering the team over there. So again, Noles247. And man, I mean, look, like I said, obviously we understand this hasn't been the best season for Florida State here, but an opportunity for them to kind of right some wrongs here. What's the mood around the team this week? I just from seeing a lot of Florida State reporters stuff, we've seen practices haven't been the best, I guess you could say, in terms of the energy levels and stuff like that. Anything different this week, understanding that it is Miami?
No, not really. It's kind of been a theme this entire regular season, just the flip in intensity among the players, among the coaches, just everybody that's out there. It feels like it's just taken a sharp decrease ever since the season started. And I don't really feel like they've implemented any additional motivation that they typically would in a rivalry week, or maybe they don't even, it's not even things the staff needs to implement. It's just the players are inherently more motivated because they're playing their rival. I wouldn't say it's been worse, but I also I don't think anything has stood out enough where you're like, oh, it's clearly a rivalry week. It's kind of just been another week of practice, I'd say.
Clay, look, 1-6 season, it's one of those years, a lot we can get too negative. Is there anything that going into this game, there's some positive momentum, whether it's a player, a position, is there anything that people are holding their hats on saying, hey, I want to see how this looks on Saturday because this position or this player or something has been looking pretty good lately?
Yeah, I'd say the young linebacker core. We had a veteran, DJ Lundy, who went down with an injury earlier in the year. He's out for the year. Wasn't having a very strong campaign regardless. Omar Graham, who's a redshirt sophomore, had a really rough performance in Dublin and got a lot of negative backlash for it, but he has really turned his game around in recent weeks and had a strong showing versus Duke. And Justin Juice Cryer is, I think, the second highest graded player on the team right now. And he's just a great motivator, great leader, which is something the team needs right now. And he's been stacking a couple of strong performances in a row. Blake Nicholson, who's a sophomore, talented recruit, was out last week with an injury. I think he's expected to be back this week. So yeah, you've got a lot of young talent in that linebacker room. And then I think also the tight end room has some young talent in the true freshman duo of Landon Thomas and Amari Williams, who've both flashed.
Yeah, Omar Graham, I know he's a South Florida guy, so I'm sure he's going to be motivated. I remember watching him play back in high school. So just looking at the big picture of the program, it's such a roller coaster where you have the undefeated regular season, then everything that happened with the postseason, and then this year, Norvell has a huge extension. Now you're reevaluating certain things. Obviously, he himself is not going anywhere. I know fans fed, but we know that's not going to happen. Big picture, when people are being reasonable, what are some of the things that they see as necessary changes or adjustments to philosophy, personnel, staff that need to happen here?
Yeah, I think sort of the narrative of this is a staff that doesn't really prioritize the high school recruiting has kind of like come to fruition a little bit. There's not an optimal amount of guys on this roster that were recruited out of high school who are able to contribute at a Florida State level. So I think that's a bit of an effort thing. That's like a mindset. There's a want to in recruiting, and there's certain staffs. I mean, even Mario Cristobal, there's been times where his team has underperformed and he still recruits at a very high level. Last year, that has to change. That's not a sustainable formula in college football. It appears just relying on the portal year in, year out. This portal haul, the hit rate is very, very low on this last portal haul. I think you just have to prioritize high school recruiting, and whether that means getting some new guys in the building who maybe are like more focused on that, more relatable, more energetic. I don't know, but there has to be more of an emphasis on getting talent in the building, young talent in the building.
Yeah, we actually had that similar discussion on our show yesterday, and that's pretty much what we had said. Obviously, last year, incredible job in the portal by Norvell and staff, and we see the guys in the league who are doing that, and they were drafted, where they were supposed to be drafted. They're playing well already in the league. So again, that mix of high school and portal, it doesn't seem like it's there right now. Let's go right off the top to the quarterback position here. Obviously, DJU out for the season, it appears like, with hand injury. And look, there was expectations for him coming in. He had an up and down career up to that point, but now turning to Brock Glenn, Luke Kromanoke. Am I saying the name correctly there?
I don't know. The commentators will flip play by play. It's so I've yet to get a firm answer on that. I feel like the coaches half of them say Kromanoke. I don't know.
So we'll call him Luke K. But is Brock Glenn, is he locked in as the guy this week? Do we expect to see a little bit of both, as we saw in the Duke game, where Luke did make some nice throws there? We saw the drop touchdown pass on the one there by Kentron Poitier, who's a Miami guy, South Florida guy. But how would you kind of assess the quarterback situation now in terms of the snaps that we're expected to see this week?
Yeah, so last week, I think Luke played 14 snaps or so, 15 snaps. I think that's going to continue to be a trend throughout the rest of the year. I think the staff understands that in this day and age of the transfer portal, you're probably not going to be able to hold on to both of these guys next year, regardless of what happens. It's just the way it is. Brock's going into his third year. Luke's entering his second year, was a big time recruit. Teams will be interested in them. I think Norvell understands the importance and seeing what he has in Luke. And I'm just a little hesitant because I kind of expected him to ride with Luke a little bit longer against Duke, but he pulled him and put Brock back in, and he really would have had over 100 yards and a touchdown if not for two really brutal drops when Luke was in. So I think we'll probably see a similar amount of him as we did against Duke. It just depends on if the game gets out of hand. I wonder if like they'd be more like, let's just leave Luke out there. But I think that'll be something we continue to see is both of them. And I think we might even see Luke's like snaps continue to increase over the year.
So look, this is college football, 20-point favorite, but 20-point favorites do lose. What's the path to victory look like if Florida State is going to win this game?
The O-line would need to have like the best performance of the year by far, because this is the best defensive front that they've played all year, by far. The receivers would need to catch, but I'd really would be like a big game from one of the freshman quarterbacks. Those are kind of the most unknown or underclassmen quarterbacks. Those are kind of the most unknown commodities that could like have some variance to them. If one of them just like decides, hey, I'm going to introduce myself to the country tonight, like, yeah, I mean, they both are more than talented enough to do so. It's just about the consistency. And I think that would probably be the path. The run game, maybe being a little bit more consistent and efficient than it has been, which it's been the worst in the country. Yeah, and the defense really. I mean, the Miami offense is just the defense has played well this year for FSU, but they haven't seen an offense like this. So can they continue to keep up the performances they've been putting up, or is that more of a schedule thing? So there's not a great path, really.
Let me follow up on the running game before Pete gets in there, because we looked at the spring game, we watched the spring game, and we could see the receivers might be a problem. We had known Jaylen Brown since he was in high school, or known of the player. Malik Benson was a Miami recruit. So you kind of knew the limitations of those guys. The offensive line, you can kind of see him getting knocked back a little bit. But I am surprised that the running game is where it is. What do you think led to the running game going from what people expected to be a strength to being, statistically going into this game, the worst in the country?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'd like to say not even just a strength, like the entire staff believed this would be their best running game they've had in Norvell's tenure. Like this was supposed to be the thing they hung their hat on. That's why you brought in DJU. You aren't supposed to be relying on, the thought process there was you're not going to be relying on this superhero quarterback play because you're going to have this strong offensive line, this strong running game they can lean on. And that obviously didn't come to fruition. I think it's the miscues in the offensive line, man. I mean, it was stuff that we saw in film breakdowns last year. Their bread and butter play, they love to say, is counter, but the guy pulling the second puller on the counter run play just never makes the right read. It's been a thing all season. It's just stuff like that. I think they missed on some of their offensive line evaluations. Yeah, it's a disaster, the run game. There's no real good explanation for how it could go from the best of our tenure at this school to literally 134 out of 134 in the country.
Well, I'll say this, Clay. Obviously, Miami's defense has had their struggles in the ACC. So if there is a week that Florida State maybe has some optimism offensively, maybe it's this week. Not to just go back to the quarterback position, but I wanted to talk about Brock Glenn a little bit. I mean, there were some glimpses in the Clemson game, some throws that he made, and he does have the ability to get out of the pocket a little bit. How would you describe? We'll start with Brock and then we'll get to Luke. How would you describe each of their skill sets for the Miami fans that are saying, man, it doesn't seem to matter which quarterback they're facing, but they've been putting up big numbers against them?
Yeah, so Brock's like a little bit more of a built kind of guy. He's willing to take contact. He loves to run. They're both pretty mobile, but Brock, I mean, there's been times in practice where he'll open up and like he's got long speed, like he can run. I'd say Brock's probably best ball is like a seam, like to the slot receiver, tight end up the middle. Kind of struggles with timing and accuracy underneath. Luke also sometimes can struggle with timing and accuracy underneath. He's very comfortable like maneuvering the pocket and can get out and run. He's a good athlete. I mean, he played safety and wide receiver in high school in addition to quarterback. So that's no surprise. Luke has a super, super strong arm. He can rip it into tight windows, can like launch it farther than Brock can deep downfield, as was exhibited on the throw to Kintron. But yeah, Luke is he's really good at hitting the timing routes, like out the 10 to 15 yard outs, 10 to 15 yard digs, like kind of like pro level throws, like NFL level throws, more so than like a vertical shot where you're just kind of dropping it to the receiver, which is Brock's sort of specialty. Luke has some real flashes of stuff like that. I kind of reminds me of I think it was Williams last year had a throw like that against FSU. But yeah, they both struggle with consistency. They both can run. They both have pretty strong arms. I'd say the biggest difference is like the willingness to run. Brock is just very eager to run and will bail on a bad pocket or a good pocket. But yeah, there's really there's no huge difference between the two from a Miami fan's perspective that you need to be worrying about.
Defensive line, that to me jumps out because you look at the stats. We did a stat roll on FSU, and you know the stats, not great on offense. Certainly, defense really kind of probably below what you expected, but the pass rush was a top 20 pass rush when you look at sacks per game, sack percentage, and we know some of the names there from a talent standpoint. How would you assess the defensive line to this point, given, and you know, how do you think all the offseason stuff with the transfer portal and everything impacted their performance on the field, if at all?
Yeah. It's been incredibly disappointing. I mean, you have Pete Thamel going on College Game Day saying that draft scouts told him this is the best defensive line in the country. And I mean, it's been pretty bad every week. They had a really, really strong showing against Cal, but Cal is, I think, the only pass blocking team worse than FSU in the Power Four. Other than that, they just haven't gotten anything going. I mean, Pat Payton had 0 pressures against Duke after having 7 last year. That's like he had the best game of his career against Duke last year. And he had 0 this year. And their offensive line is worse. Marvin Jones Jr., he flashes, actually. He has some like exciting reps where he can beat the tackles with a spin move, or, you know, you see why he was a 5-star. But the inconsistency in the run game from him is just really tough to watch sometimes. And you have a guy, Sione Lolohea, can rotate in. He's a transfer from Oregon State. He's more of a solid run defender. He's been decent. Daryl Jackson has, I think he's turned it around a little bit after a really rough start to the year. But he's definitely not living up to expectations. He's been a solid run stopper. He's given a little bit more pass rush juice than I expected, but I'd say his draft stock has like dropped during this year. Really, the only one who's been consistently impressive outside of the Georgia Tech game is Josh Farmer. That guy's making himself some money. He is one of those guys with the portal issues in the offseason. That was a controversy, but man, he is playing like he earned all that money that I'm sure they paid him. You know, he's relentless. Like that guy fights to get pressure, fights as a run defender. He's fun to watch. I think he'll be a early day 2, mid day 2 draft pick. Super explosive.
That trip to the Turks and Caicos must have rejuvenated Daryl Jackson.
That's something else.
What was the reaction from the Florida State fans? Because us as Miami fans, we kind of saw that, and it reminded us of stuff that's happened at Miami, you know, over the years. Obviously, not to that extent, but
right. Well, we had them too,
yeah,
it was not a surprising thing from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like sort of damning. Like, this kind of sums up the state of the program right now. Like, you know, you are in as bad of a state as you can be, and you are using your bye week to, you know, go on a trip. So I think it's his money, it's his decision, but yeah, fans were upset by it. I know they only get so many weekends off, but yeah. It's not my place to judge, but I know that it definitely was not a popular post that he made.
Let me ask you, just big picture. Look, Canes fans, we've been in these seasons where you're already looking at the off season around this time of the calendar. So I understand that as a fan and just as an observer. This, replacing staff members, that's kind of always part of it. But bigger picture than that, it seemed like last year in the portal, you guys got a lot of guys that were not starters or that were not big contributors, but they were highly acclaimed recruits, whether it was Brown, Little, Marvin Jones, Benson.
All the Bama guys.
Right. DJU had been productive the year before, but it was really kind of his 5-star history that maybe is why we all knew his name, right?
Yeah.
So have you heard anything? Is there any discussion of just like, listen, philosophically, this recruiting class is not necessarily going to go to top 10 this year. The portal's coming up. That's going to be a whole new set of players. Like philosophic changes as far as how FSU acquires personnel and attacks things.
Yeah, well, so the funny thing about that is like you can pretty easily make a case that they already made that change last offseason when they got away from what they now are probably going to have to get back to, which is finding guys who maybe Fisk was like a top-ranked defensive tackle in the portal, but who plays for Western Michigan and put up really impressive stats. And maybe he's in year 6 and maybe he didn't have an NFL future at the time. And obviously that worked out well for him. Maybe a Johnny Wilson, who Arizona State was about to kick off, had no interest in moving forward with as a wide receiver. Trey Benson, who just suffered a gruesome knee injury. Just finding these diamonds in the rough, which is something they totally got away from in this last cycle. They resorted back to a lot of guys who, like you said, either were highly rated recruits or maybe not necessarily highly rated recruits, but just guys that they had previously established relationships with out of high school. Maybe guys that came in second for. TJ Ferguson from Alabama FSU was number 2 for him out of high school. They just kind of went for it. He's been there's no easy. I mean, he's the worst offensive lineman in the entire country, regardless of position. You just can't. I hate to say like logo watching, taking these Bama guys, these Georgia guys, these LSU guys, because it's not that simple. And they evaluated these players, but like you changed your philosophy and it clearly did not age well. You got to get back to what got you here. You got to get back to finding these diamonds in the rough. I know that that's tough, but you've proven that you can do it at a pretty successful rate, like much more successful than many other schools. I mean, until this year, Florida State was arguably like the king of the portal, that's been their thing, is these evaluations. And then when you just kind of throw that all out the window and just based off previous relationships, it doesn't end well.
Jared Verse, probably the best example of that.
Yeah,
from Albany,
right. Albany. I mean, that's going to have to change. That's going to have to change, especially like you said, with this small high school class. You're going to have to bring in a lot of these portal guys, and you're not going to be able to. You can't get all 4 and 5 stars if you got to bring in like 25 guys, So you gotta find some other types of talent.
So Clay, you mentioned Ferguson. I'm not going to ask if Darius Washington is going to play. I understand that there's been speculation, nothing official. Let's assume, for purposes of this question, that he's not playing the starting left tackle, who I think is the best offensive tackle, best offensive lineman for the Noles. Still, I know he was acclaimed that way. We recruited him back in the day for the Canes. If he's out, what's this offensive line look like, and what does it mean to not have a player like that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be like devastating. You're playing Reuben Bain and you're playing Tyler Barron and Elijah Alston. If he can't go, most likely that means you have some sort of combination of Robert Scott, 5th-year offensive lineman, who maybe had a case to be medically disqualified in this offseason. He's been so banged up over his career. He's playing through injuries right now. He's out there. He's out there on pure vibes, really. He's fighting for it out there. Has some rough moments in games. And then Lucas Simmons with potentially make his debut in that scenario, who was a top 120 or so recruit, highest rated offensive lineman FSU signed in a while, 6'8" from Sweden originally, super high potential. I've been on record. I'm a big fan of his game. He lost last season to a medical issue, so he wasn't able to practice during the season. He had to do a medical red shirt, and it kind of shows, you know. So that would be a disaster. Like that would be. I don't know if that's a duo that's capable of blocking the Miami defensive line, and then you pair it with the rest of the offensive line not performing very well. That's a matchup right there. That is a good matchup for Miami.
Let me follow up. I want to understand the makeup of the line here. So Simmons, has he gained weight? Because I know we recruited him as well at Miami, of Cristobal and Mirabal offensive line guys. They identified him as a guy with a lot of talent. Has he gained weight? Where's he at weight-wise?
So I know he was at like 315 in the summer. I don't know that he's lost weight, but he looks like he has. So that's not super encouraging. But he looks skinnier than he did in the summer, in the spring.
And then left. Yeah. So if those two are kind of vying for the left tackle spot, what does it look like from left guard on right?
So left guard is redshirt freshman Andre Otto. He's super smart, had a bunch of Ivy League offers.
Key West kid, right?
Key West kid, yep.
Yeah, I liked him in high school. He was talented.
He's super hard worker, super motivated. All the older offensive linemen list him first when they're asked about a guy with potential. He got thrown into the fire against Clemson, I think. He plays a little bit of everything, but they've settled him in at left guard. He's been solid. And then at center, you have fifth-year senior Maurice Smith. Typically was a known commodity, just kind of undersized, but, you know, super experienced, 3,000 snaps of experience, has started for FSU since Taggart was here. But this year, he's got snapping issues. I don't know if it's like the yips or what, but it's like a serious issue. Like it's 2 to 3 times a game. Then right guard, you have Jalen Early, who's the highest graded player on the entire team. He's had some really impressive run blocking moments this year. Started the year at tackle when Jeremiah Byers went down with an injury earlier in the year. Early filled in for him at right tackle. Over the bye week, Alex Atkins decided that he was going to make the move for Early to kick inside to guard due to the struggles that have been had there with the aforementioned Ferguson. So we've got Early at right guard, really strong run blocker, really good out in space, good athlete. And then Jeremiah Byers, the transfer from UTSA. He was here last year. Up and down, he's got some inconsistencies. I think he's been better this year, but yeah, left to right, not a very strong unit. And then I guess you'll see Keandre Jones, the Auburn transfer, rotate in a bit at guard. He's really big, but not the most consistent player.
Pete, I'm sorry for hogging Clay.
No, I wanted to flip over to the defensive side of the ball real quick.
I have one follow-up on offense before.
Okay, go ahead. You asked the follow-up there.
Yeah. Julian Armella, I know he's not in the picture. What happened to him? Because he's someone that we've watched since he was a freshman in high school. Seemed like someone with potential. I don't mind trying to get in on him late, unsuccessfly. Why has he not been able to crack such a struggling offensive line?
Yeah, he started at tackle, moved to guard this spring. He's just got balance issues, man. Like really, really, really bad balance issues. Like just way too often he's on the ground, way too often, and there's not enough good to balance that out. I think he's. I don't know if he's regressed, but he's definitely not. I don't think he's a guy they're like planning on moving forward with. I think some of us maybe expected him to leave in the spring window, but he did not. Just offensive line rating, recruiting rankings is hard. It's hard to project offensive linemen. So
yeah, very, very tough. A lot of guys who are not big recruits end up doing well. A lot of traits there involved. Just a couple more questions here before we let you go, Clay. We talked, the defensive line does have talent, right? So it's not, and they've had their moments. I think we were talking about it yesterday, 20th in the country in sack percentage.
Yeah.
Right. So when you talk about potentially slowing down this Miami offense, the passing attack on the back end, how has it looked in the secondary? Because that's been an area of success over the last couple of years for Florida State. Obviously, we see some guys in the pros, but corner and safety, how would you kind of assess how it looks there right now?
Yeah, corner has been a strong suit for FSU this year. As all things, not quite living up to the expectations. I think a lot of people expected Azaria Thomas to maybe, myself included, maybe work his way into the first round. He hasn't been bad. He's been one of FSU's more consistent players, really. But then Fintrell Cypress, that was sort of touted as like one of the top corner duos in the country. He's just kind of been fine. He's, is what he is. He's a stable guy, makes plays on the football, seems to have taken a step up in run defense. Kevin Knowles takes reps in the nickel. He's been around the program for a while, played safety last year, was notable in the Miami game for missing the tackle on whoever was it George, yeah.
He's another South Florida guy
for like
too.
80 yards. Yeah. But he's been much improved at nickel, which has been a cool thing to see as he's gotten to move back to his natural position. Safety, and then behind those guys you have some talented young players. Quindarius Jones out of Mississippi had 4 pass breakups in 1 drive or 3 against Cal. Edwin Joseph, South Florida guy, has had some splash plays on the year. Jabril Rawls will work in from Pensacola. And then at safety, you've got Shyheim Brown as the veteran of that room. He's kind of been disappointing this season, maybe not quite taking the step that he was hoping to after really improving year over year up until this year. And then they started the year with Conrad Hussey as the starter next to him. Him and Devontae Brown, I guess, were the 2 guys working as starters. They've both really kind of been phased out at this point. Both were really big issues early on in the year, and so they've been replaced with redshirt freshman KJ Kirkland out of Jacksonville. He's a big frame guy, very smart, good leader. He's a guy I think has a bright future at FSU, hopefully.
Just on the recruiting front, and Clay, you've been very generous with your time. This is a best chance to understand FSU's program as a whole beyond just the memes and the record and things like that. I'm trying to understand some of the things that we could maybe see going forward, because there's, it's not like you just replace everybody. There's going to be an adjustment as you figure out how this thing can get back on track.
Right.
I'm looking at last year's class and really the year before with Charles Lester, Jamari Howard, Kai Bates, Manasseh Ateti, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the big offensive lineman from California, who Miami recruited pretty much all of those guys, definitely recruited the offensive linemen and some of those DBs. And then, of course, last year, Hakeem Williams, or 23 Hakeem Williams. Miami's had some misses as well, or guys that just are developing slower that were in this recruiting range, but most of the guys in that range are on the field for Miami. How are these guys not seeing the field for a team that's struggling like FSU, and is that a point of contention with the fan base?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been a pretty public free them youngins movement started by LaWayne McCoy and Elijah Moore, the true freshman receivers from South Florida and Maryland. Yeah, I mean, it's a little head scratching, to be honest. The freshmen, start with the freshman receivers. Elijah Moore, BJ Gibson, LaWayne McCoy, all have they have some great moments in practice. They also have some bad moments. Elijah Moore fumbled today, got the ball punched out after an easy catch. But the thing is, if the seniors are making those mistakes in games, why, you take those lumps with a true freshman. You don't take those lumps with a fifth-year guy. I think really when you talk about the corners in last year's class, I think they also would like to play more. I think Charles Lester has posted the Free Them Youngins as well. That's really just a difficulty. Like, there's just so much talent in that cornerback room, even if it's not really, making a big difference right now. Like, it's just tough to take reps. I guess maybe you could take some from like Fintrell. There's just only so many to go around. Azaria Thomas hardly ever comes off the field. I guess offensive line. Itete has only played football for 2 years, so he's going to take a little while. But yeah, I mean, Hakeem's gotten a little bit more involved in recent weeks, but you see some good and bad with him there. He had a really rough drop against Duke from Luke. I think ideally you continue to see these younger players continue to get implemented more and more, because otherwise it's going to be tough to sell much on the recruiting trail. Like, if you are performing this poorly and not allowing your talented underclassmen to prove themselves, like, what's the path to playing time? What are you selling these kids on? So you got to keep giving opportunities to the young players, and they've shown a willingness at certain positions, moving on from a guy like Kyle Morlock and giving the true freshman tight end duo some more reps. But yeah, I mean, I think the real one is the receivers. Like, why are those guys not getting out there? Like, it just doesn't make much sense.
I have 2 questions for you, and then we'll be done. One, I'll give you a chance to talk about something good. The special teams, man, the kicker and punter. There we go. I like to see a smile on your face, Clay.
That's
Talk
right.
Talk to us about those guys. I mean, they've been, even yesterday, Mario Cristobal was giving his props in his weekly show. So talk about those guys a little bit.
Yeah. So Mastromano, the punter, was Ray Guy finalist last year, one of the 3 best punters in the country. I think he's the only punter in the country right now, like active, who was a finalist at any point. Mid-season All-American on basically every list, leads the country in yards per punt. That guy's, he's awesome. He gets it so consistently inside the 10, 20-yard line. And I think he only has 1 touchback on the year. Dog. He's good. He's good. He had a really good game against Miami last year. I think he got to break the rock. That was a big game. That was probably his best game. And then Fitzgerald started the year super strong out in Ireland, had, I think, the longest field goal in program history. I don't think he's missed a field goal this year. They had like a bad snap last week, but other than that, they've pretty much been perfect in special teams this year, ignoring the return game, which took a big blow when they lost Jalen Lucas for the year, who's All-American kick returner. FSU hasn't really seen much out of the punt return game with LaWayne McCoy, but he's consistently catching the ball, so at least he's not muffing it, I guess. But
and then
the kicker punter, we love it. That's what we're hanging the hat on over here.
My last question for you, and then we'll get out of here. Has there been, because look, Florida State fans, obviously a big contingent of them in South Florida and always travel well to Hard Rock Stadium when Miami plays. Has there been a sentiment that there's going to be, less fans? I mean, fans maybe selling their tickets that they got before the season. I mean, with the way the season's gone.
Oh yeah. That's been in. I guess I haven't seen it as much this game, and it's possible that maybe that won't happen as much just because it's the rivalry game and you have so many South Florida FSU fans who maybe this is the only game all year they get to go to. But I mean, I've been seeing all year, like, hey, I've got tickets to the game at SMU, I've got tickets to the Clemson game, I've got to, I mean, fans, this isn't Florida State football. This isn't like an acceptable product for Florida State fans. They're not really interested in going to spend their money and support this team. I think it's going to be a very green and orange crowd in Hard Rock. Maybe, this is not going to be the year for Florida State fans to get their jokes off about Hard Rock's attendance or whatever.
Clay Fink, man, great job. Again, you guys follow him. Clay_Fink does a great job with Noles247. My favorite follow on Noles Twitter, man. So Clay,
I appreciate you guys.
Great information today. Appreciate your time, and we'll see what happens this weekend, man. Listen, Miami. I don't think they were as bad as Florida State last year, but they were going into Tallahassee, a top 5 team, undefeated.
That's true.
With a backup quarterback. So there are still some Canes fans out there that say, look, it's a rivalry game, and Mario Cristobal, we know, is not taking the Noles lightly. So we'll see what happens this weekend. Clay Fink, man, great job. Thank you once again.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.